displaced coal miners. And we had a discussion, and we talked about the effects of what potentially marijuana could have for our state. And we talked about the economics of it. We talked about putting displaced coal miners back to work in a safer way. But after that, I had a couple of them, as I had to run out, come up to me and shake my hand and thank me for the courage that I had to speak on that topic and to take up for them. And one of them, as I was rushing out to actually go coach a practice, he said, man, I just want to try to get off these pills. This will help me get off these pills. And I've often joked about, because I'm very much this, I've tried in private and public sector, very much a friend of coal. But I've always talked about when we had that Friends of Coal Bowl, I didn't see a lot of miners up in that luxury box. I just didn't see it. So I stand before you today with my experience. This is the Friend of the Coal Miners Amendment. A friend of the coal miners. And I urge you to think about those people in our state that we've talked about for forever, and a lot these past years, not the executive, not the operators, but the coal miners, because they're hurting. And this can help them get off those prescriptions and get their families back on track. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Right, from the third, Doug Storage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe I have questions for the gentleman from the 3rd and the gentleman from the 27th.
Gentleman from the third, yield. Gentleman yields.
I'm sorry, I'm not probably going to be able to articulate this very well, but one of my questions relates to the gentleman from the 27th saying that we would be the first state to move this from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 4. So could you explain your intention with doing that?
The intention is simply to allow, by going from a Schedule 1 that has no medical value. If the gentleman would like to reform it to a different schedule that allows for a prescription, which is what this does, I'd be happy to do so. But the intent is simply to take it from a Schedule 1 so that then we are saying as a state, because the feds are not good at what they do, they're saying it's a Schedule 1. We're going to say no on the state level. It's not a Schedule 1. We're taking it out of the Schedule 1 just simply so it can be prescribed by a practicing physician. Period.
So do you envision that physicians would start prescribing it, and would they be able to start prescribing it just from moving it from a 1 to a 4?
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask the same questions of the gentleman from 27?
Gentleman from 27th, yield. Gentleman yields.
Certainly. Question about 1 to 4. Yeah, we did some research last night. Couldn't find another state. Could not find another state that had moved it from Schedule 1 to Schedule 4.
And why do you think that that is?
I really would only be speculating. I have no idea. Probably, it depends on what kind of scientific evidence that they've looked at. They may have decided to follow the same expertise that the other states have in terms of the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency and their 3-year study.
So with the other 28 states that were referenced to actually having the prescriptive ability with this, how do they do it?
Well, they have a structure in place that allows certain guidelines, just like any other regulated activity, as to how it's to be done, under what circumstances, the dosages, and so forth. This basically would put no restrictions on anything other than find a doctor, they'll give you a prescription, you can smoke your joint, go underground in the coal mine, and if you're intoxicated, there's not much anything can do about it, and whatever. So, there's no, once we remove it from here, if you can find a doctor that give you a prescription, you're okay. You can use it.
Okay, thank you.
Gentleman from 22nd, Doug Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really wasn't going to get up and talk today, but I think I owe it to a lot of my constituents that's come to me in the last 6 years. I know that when are you going to get this done? When are you going to get this done? When are you going to get this done? My aunt passed away back in 1990, I believe it was, and she was terribly sick. She had breast cancer, and she ended up with bone cancer, and she really wanted some medicine to help her. And And I owe it to her to get up and share my story. She would not do it. She would not smoke marijuana or consume it in some type of oil, as the chair lady mentioned that this bill will allow if FDA approves it. I've heard the FDA's name a lot about proven and not proven, or letting go or not letting go. I think the FDA has the choice of getting it off of Schedule 1, which I think in the 70s was placed under Schedule 1 by Richard Nixon, President Nixon, against the advice of his staff that was over that part of the department. Last year, I sit right here, and my good friend Delegate Flanagan got up and gave a speech. And the one thing that sticks out to me that he talked about was not feeling demonized, not feeling like he was a criminal because he was searching for medication to help with his illness. The only medicine that he took that helped him not only not take his oxycodones, but to gain weight, to be able to eat while he was doing his treatments. So I feel like I owe that to him, I owe it to my aunt, I owe it to a lot of the veterans, I owe it to a lot of coal miners. The gentle lady talked about in this bill of making the CBD oil less than 2% or 0.2%. I didn't understand that. It's my understanding that would be hemp. You can make that from hemp CBD oil. Same thing. If it's a regulation so low, it doesn't have any THC in it, it comes from hemp seeds. This simply takes it off of Schedule 1 and puts it down to where somebody can write you a prescription for it. Like they can Xanaxes, like they can Roxys, like they can Oxys, like they can all the other things that have been killing our people. Someone spoke in here that didn't ever hear of anybody overdosing on marijuana, but cannabis. I haven't either. But if we continue going down this road of criminalizing it and making people feel like a criminal because they have eaten a candy bar that had some CBD oil made from the cannabis. My friend from the first back here got up and asked for courage. I seek the courage to get up and stand today and talk for this. My area probably doesn't poll as well as some areas in the state of West Virginia about the acceptance. But Lord God, we're going to put it for a doctor to prescribe to us. We trust our doctors, right? Do we? Someone spoke in here about the other states. Don't know how they got it moving. No other state's done this. They probably, in their states, has probably got legislation moving. It's the reason why they haven't done this. They passed legislation. They've listened to their people. Have the courage to stand up for what is right. Get it off of Schedule 1 and put it on Schedule 4. Thank you.
John from the 41st, Doug Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm a fairly quiet individual. A lot of you know that. I don't speak often. But I felt compelled to today at the risk of making some folks mad at me over this issue. Just about a couple of years ago, my nephew, he had been diagnosed with cancer. And I hadn't thought much about this issue. It wasn't a big thing with me, and didn't know one way or the other if I would support it if it ever came up for a vote. But after he got cancer, I went to Pittsburgh and I spent some time in the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital. And I saw all these kids with these diagnosed with cancer and so much pain from these treatments. And I thought at that point about this issue, you know, if he ever needed this medical marijuana or cannabis or whatever it may be to ease his pain, I would go to any length, make any stops in order to get it to him. Because I could not stand to see these kids in pain. And I realize it's been said about the emotional arguments. I can't help it. I've experienced this personally, and it kills me. And I know there have been arguments with the being committee on the floor. Some folks worried about, well, the federal government, it's illegal. You know, well, when have we ever said to the, you know, when have we ever paused to say, oh, you know, we're not going to fight the EPA, for instance, because, oh, that's federal. You know, they said, you know, don't do this, so we're not going to do it. No, we fought the EPA too. I mean, it's not a related subject, but still, when have we ever been afraid to stand up to the federal government? So, you know, if, you know, the delegate from Kanawha, he stood and he was talking about a bill that's stuck in committee right now. If I saw that that bill was going to see the light of day, then I'd vote against this, because I want a chance to vote on that, you know, if it had a chance of passing. But let's be real, I don't see that happening. So I want to vote for this today, and I would encourage my colleagues to do the same.
Gentleman from the 30, House being ordered. Gentleman from the 32nd, you pass.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that this amendment is none other than an attempt to declassify and legalize marijuana, and I vehemently speak against this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I'm speaking on behalf now of all the youngsters in this room, in our midst this day, and our citizens of the state of West Virginia. There is no question that marijuana affects negatively the health of the body, brain function, memory. There's no question that's what it does. I wanted to read a little bit of information. This is from Newsweek 2015 article. This is regarding Colorado. In 2014 and 2015, nearly $6 million in pot revenues have been distributed to local governments. $6 million. But the cost of increased law enforcement, drug driving incidents, fatal crashes, loss of productivity, and a huge spike in gang-related crime brings into question the cost benefits of those dollars. Teen drug-related school expulsions are also on the rise. And the notion that prisons filled...
Gentleman stays
directly to
Talking about legalization, I'd appreciate if the body would read the amendment and then speak to the amendment.
Again, I think the gentleman is talking about, in fact, you've made reference to what other states have done in your comments. I think he's referring to what the reflection of what states have done in the other states.
Which we're trying to do here.
The gentleman, I think we've given a lot of leeway to everyone that's talked on this today, to be quite frank, and if we want to get very specific to it, we can do that, but I think I've tried to give leeway because everyone has said they wanted to debate this issue, and this amendment is that issue, so I'm going to give the gentleman the leeway that I've given, I think, to the other members. Gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I believe the broadness, as explained by the chairman, calls for the information I'm providing. And I'll read on the Newsweek article. And the notion that prisons filled with minor drug offenders would be relieved of overcrowding, a selling point of legalization of marijuana, has been blown to smithereens. A 2016 CBS report. Here are the highlights in just 3 years since legalization. Marijuana-related traffic deaths increased 48%. Over 20% of all traffic deaths were marijuana-related compared to only 10% 6 years ago. Marijuana-related emergency department visits increased 49%. Marijuana-related hospitalizations increased 32%. Imagine about the Medicaid bill for that. Marijuana-related calls to the Rocky Mountain Poison Center increased 100%. Colorado youth now rank #1 in the nation for marijuana use and 74% higher than the national average. Is that what we want, ladies and gentlemen, to go down this road? Do we want to be #1 in that category? Do we want to go down this road and top Colorado so that we can have more youths smoking pot, which, again, affects health, brain function, memory? The number of marijuana-related driving deaths has skyrocketed in Colorado. I mean, it's just a fact. It's not my opinion. So, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of our people, on behalf of our state, on behalf of our children, I urge a strong rejection of this amendment. It just doesn't make sense. And again, I'm not speaking just purely from my opinion. I'm reading facts here, ladies and gentlemen. Solid facts. This is something that we cannot afford as a state. I urge rejection.
Jump to the 25th, Doug Painter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm really on the fence with this one. It's just, I wholeheartedly support medical marijuana because I know people it's helped firsthand. The reason I'm on the fence is because we have to be done this way. I mean, there's bills out there for this issue. If they were run, we could eliminate just the whole backdoor deal here. It's just get an honest, run it, get an honest vote on it, and let it stand on its own merits. If honest debate factors good discussions and good decisions, and the people of West Virginia, they deserve both. That's all I got. Thank you.
John for the 20th, Doug Markham.
Ladies and gentlemen, now's the time. Now's the time to be courageous and push that button for this amendment. We keep kicking this can down the road that's been here for years. This can just keeps getting kicked. Nobody wants to run the bills and do the right thing. When are we going to be courageous and stand up and say enough's enough? We have the chance right now. It's not often you're going to get this chance. It's not often you're going to have the opportunity to do what's right. The bills are there. They're not running. The process is what it is. There's an amendment pending. Push the button. Let's go. Now's the time. What's important about this, ladies and gentlemen, taking this from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 4, it's still illegal without a prescription. So let's stick to the facts and quit talking about states that just have, like Colorado, who say marijuana is legal across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, it's still illegal. It requires doctors to write you a prescription. I spent 5 years as a prosecutor. Very, very little do you see crime and other offenses coming from marijuana. It's coming from these large pill pushers who brought pills to our state. But yet, no, we don't want to touch the pharmaceutical industries. By gosh, too many campaign donations there.
Gentleman's out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's tell the truth.
I'm going to really admonish the members to stick to what this amendment is about. And I've given some leeway because I do think there is some in terms of recreational and medical marijuana, some of the same arguments, but in terms of getting off onto other things and other bills, I'd ask the members to stick to what the amendment is in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, you can buy Xanax, which is a Schedule 2 or a Schedule 4 via Skype, but yet we cannot legalize a drug that will help cancer patients on their deathbed. Be courageous. Now's the time to stand up and do what's right. The people of West Virginia want this. The polls show it 3-1. 3-1, the polls show it. Do what your constituents want and stand up for what's right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman for the 29th, Doug Moy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the gentleman from the 27th yield for a question?
Gentleman yield. Gentleman yields.
Yes.
I've been doing some internet searching while this debate's been going on, and not that I believe everything on the internet, but I've come to the conclusion from things that I have read that states do not necessarily have to go by the FDA's recommendation for drug classes.
Is there a question? I'm sorry, the question
Is that correct, that West Virginia can schedule, we have the right or authority to classify or schedule drugs, and it doesn't have to match what the FDA suggests? Am I right or wrong?
Here's my understanding. The Board of Pharmacy follows the DEA, which in turn follows the FDA. So our Board of Pharmacy would follow what the federal government does. If that answers your question.
I understand that we usually follow that, but is it within the state's authority, our right to reschedule differently? Okay.
I mean, I guess we could do whatever the heck we want. We could declare independence if we wanted to, but we normally follow the federal government's lead on drug issues. And the FDA takes the lead on that. And, you could just ignore it. The FDA has much more capability to research. As I indicated earlier, they did a 3-year study on this issue. I don't know of any study that's been done here in the state that's that extensive or that involved that level of inquiry. But my understanding is we've always followed the FDA lead on these substances.
I was just trying to determine if we can do that, and my colleague just handed me the agenda, the House calendar for today, and it looks like on second reading we have, yes, our bill classifying additional drugs to Schedule 1, 2, and 4 and things. Okay, I'm not sure I got the answer I was looking for on that, but
we do this every year. When the FDA updates their schedule, we update ours. It's typical. This is nothing unusual. What's unusual is there's an effort now to vary from what the FDA tells us is the proper and the most scientifically studied way of classifying our substances.
I agree with you. They have more resources to come to those conclusions, but I was just looking if we can even do it legally. So, but it appears that we can. You had mentioned that no state had moved marijuana to Class 4.
We have not been able to locate a state that did that.
Have any moved it to Class 2 or 3 that you're aware of?
Council tells me that there may be 1 or 2 that have gone to Class 2.
To Class 2. If we reschedule this to Class 4 or 2 or 3 or whatever class we move it to, of course this amendment's to take it to 4, can a physician, I guess, write a prescription for it? But since I'm trying to work through this, if it's still illegal, we haven't legalized medical marijuana, can you go to a drugstore and get it if we were to move it to Schedule 4?
I think if you have a prescription, whether you got it in Ohio or wherever you got it, if it's a valid prescription, you can go into a pharmacy and purchase it, but I'm not sure if pharmacies actually stock marijuana. I'm sure they don't at this point. If that was your question.
Well,
I mean, you go down to Rite Aid, I don't think.
so
no
you
matter
could
what
take this
I offer,
prescription out of state and have it filled, but would it be legal for a pharmacy in West Virginia to stock this and dispense it if we have not legalized medical marijuana?
Yeah, I think and like I said earlier, I think we're sowing the seeds for a lot of confusion here. I don't think they could sell it under current law. I think probably what you could do if you had a prescription is possess it, but where you would get it, I think it would be difficult for a pharmacy, probably illegal, to actually sell it, especially with the federal regulations being such as they are.
I'm really just trying to sort through how this would work if we were to change it. And so, to recap, it sounds like we can reschedule it. Some states have, but not to 4. But if we do reschedule it, that doesn't mean it's going to be available if a physician would write a prescription for it. Somebody would have to go out of state, possibly. Is that
all
correct?
I can say, and as I said before, there's a lot of confusion that's going to follow this if we adopt it. I can't speculate as to all of the outcomes, but all I can say is if you have a doctor's prescription, if this amendment passes, you'd be able to possess it. Now, where you could get it is a whole different issue.
Okay. I think that's about as clear as
I can't give you much clarity on this because, as I said
Yeah.
before, this just opens Pandora's box as to confusion as to how it's going to play out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that.
Lady from the 51st, Dr. Bridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor of this amendment please yield?
Gentleman yields.
Okay, thank you. If the physician prescribes marijuana, then how is the physician supposed to have any control over the various grades, qualities, or strengths of the weed?
Well, it would still have to be a prescribed, just like anything else with Xanax and anything else. I don't understand really your question. If it's prescribed, it's prescribed.
Qualities and strengths.
There are various strengths, just like there are various strengths of Xanax, Tylenol, codeine, anything else under the
supposed
sun.
to write down the kind of weed that the patient is supposed to
I think
go
you're going to the implementation of it, and it would be implemented by a prescription, just like practitioners prescribe other drugs that are within the schedules. So they would prescribe it just like they would anything else.
Aren't those heavily controlled and manufactured to have all the same quality, those drugs, to be consistent and have the same strength, the same amount has the strength that you can count on? Would that be the same for weed and all the various qualities, grades, and strengths?
Yeah, but this would be treated just like anything else, like a Xanax. We're taking to Schedule 4. That's where Xanax resides. So
Xanax is
All right, I'm going to stop the video for just a second and refresh it, just because I feel like they're not getting anywhere, because she doesn't understand that with medical, you can actually do a lot more than just give somebody a joint. So hold on one second. See if it sync back up, because it's bothering me. It's got to be bothering you all.
here's a method to deliver the product to the patient. So a doctor who is professional and licensed within the state of West Virginia uses his ability and what he was trained to do and decides that maybe this is something that would work.
That's probably true. Come on now.
Strengths, grades, and qualities of
All right, looks like we're synced back up. I'm going to shut up.
out there.
Yes,
So I'm
but
not
none
sure
that has
how a
killed
doctor
anybody
would
like
have any
prescription
control
pills.
over that and then be held accountable. Okay, where would the patient buy this marijuana?
What's that?
Where would the patient buy the marijuana?
What do you,
Where would
Just-
the
it
patient
would be
buy
regulated-
the prescription?
where do patients buy other drugs now?
Excuse me?
Did they go to the pharmacy?
Yes, so that's
Okay.
where the marijuana is supposed to be available at the pharmacy?
We would I assume through the process that would become available in a pharmacy.
And then who's going to regulate that marijuana and the quality, strength, and grade and all of that?
It'd be regulated like anything else that's regulated currently under the schedules. Who
No,
regulates
they're
Xanax?
regulated
Who
by the
regulates
federal-
codeine?
Aren't they regulated by the federal government? Medicines, they're not. There's no federal checks and balances over the quality of medicine when it's manufactured.
If 28 states and DC have figured out a way to regulate it properly and it's dispensed properly as medicine, I'm pretty sure we could get that taken care of.
So West Virginia should take on the burden and expense of regulating a medicine.
West Virginia should take on the burden of helping its citizens.
Do you think it would be expensive and difficult to regulate this medicine that the federal government's unwilling to regulate?
I think it's very difficult and expensive when we're losing lives to the opioid epidemic for the state
I
of
wish
West
you would
Virginia,
think to say
which is
that
proven to decrease
it's costing
the opioid
$17+ million a year just to arrest people for marijuana. We could use that
How
money.
many studies do you have showing that opioid abuse would go down due to the use of marijuana?
The average decrease in opioid overdoses in states that have regulated and passed medicinal cannabis laws have seen a decrease of at least 25%.
How many studies did you say there are?
There are plenty of studies. Get on your computer and hit Google.
Now, how much are those states spending to regulate a medicine? And
I don't know.
as we heard, it's not being scheduled as a medicine.
I don't know.
Thank you.
The lady from the 49th, Doug Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman from the 20th yield, Mr. Markham?
Jim Deals.
Well, keep in
I
mind
just have
that
one
this
question
bill
for you.
isn't the medical bill or anything like that. All
You
this
were
does is
talking
reschedule it
about how
and makes
we've
it
been
less
kicking
of
this down the
a
road. We've been talking about it for years.
crime
I
to
know
possess it.
personally
It's
that my
essentially step
predecessor
one of a
introduced this
multi-step
bill year
process.
after year after year. And the Democrats have been in control for 83 years. Why did you never bring it up to vote for it? I don't even know if it ever got on a committee.
I don't think I need to, Mr. Speaker, I don't think I need to respond to that. I mean, that's not, has anything to do with this, and I'd call a point of order on the gentlelady. We're here trying to discuss this bill and not play political games, and I would encourage the body to do the same.
Again, I'm going to admonish all members, both sides of the aisle, that we stick to what is in this amendment. Although I will say that I think in both cases people have raised questions about motives and past of this bill and other bills that I think are still outside of the scope of what this amendment would do. So I'm going to again ask that everyone stick to what this amendment would do and talk about that in terms of our discussion. Lady from the 35th, Doug and Lane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the amendment. I am one of the sponsors of legalizing medical marijuana, and I am a firm believer that we should consider it. And just as an aside, when I was first in the legislature, back when I was almost as young as some of the members in here, we passed a medical marijuana bill in this House. The Senate passed it, and the governor signed it into law. It was a pilot program, and unfortunately, it was never implemented, and then in 1996, it was taken off the books. But I believe, and I've talked to a lot of people, that medical marijuana would help them in their suffering. But I am also a firm believer that we have to go through the process. We have to fully consider all of the ramifications. We have to listen to evidence from experts, and we have to just go through the process. And doing something as big as what this amendment does without knowing what the ramifications are, what the unintended consequences are, and all of the questions that we have heard here today, we just should vote no on this amendment, and then if the powers that be will it, then maybe we will get the debate fully and study medical marijuana itself. Thank you.
John from the 60th, Doug Wilson.